Mask by. So if you've ever heard the term dry brushing, mask by works quite well for that. Here I have a texture to block. It has all kinds of goofy textures on it, and we're just going to look at the masking features with here in Zbrush. So just know that this thing has polypaint on and has just a lot of levels. Has like 8 levels of subdivide. And what we're going to do is just try this out. If we go to the masking feature, which is down here, we can go mask by cavity, mask by smoothness, or peaks and valleys. Okay. So if I wanted to do something like this, I would probably use peaks and valleys. And I can just try the default, and it's way too harsh. Another thing is, it's really hard to see the actual where it's attaching to because of the shading. A lot of times I like to just turn it on to flat shading so I can get a little bit better understanding of what's going on. In this case, I might want to turn the coverage down quite a bit. Not that much. And there we go. So this is the range of it. So how deep the valley goes, and this is how much paint is seeping out of it. That's how I try to think of it. So if I inverse that, this is what I get. And I like to just have something like spray color with a really cool textured, kind of like this. So I got double whammy. Then if I hold it over the mesh, I hit C, it'll get that value, and then I go just a little bit darker. Now if you're a stickler for just a little bit darker, you could use this slider to darken it up just a little bit. It slides right along the color axes, and then we can get just a deeper color of that. So let's go in here and start painting. RGB on, Z add off, and sometimes I leave the opacity down quite a bit. Doesn't take much. And there we go. Pretty cool. Now, to see that, I will just clear that mask. And now I can go in here and go to render and turn it on preview again. So now I have just a really deep version of that painted in. Alright, let's look at this one. Now this one's a little harder. Let's try to think of this way. Will the default work? Let's try this one. No. And let's also turn on render flat. So I have I have not practiced this. I'm going to guess that I need a little bit more coverage. Aha. And a little less of the PV range. Okay, that works a little bit. Let's try a little bit more coverage. Too much. A little bit good. Okay, so now I'll just shrink that mask a little bit. Good. And I'll inverse it. And again, I just kind of want to go in here and spray some color into those cracks. Little goes a long way. Clear that out, and there we go. Much better. Now if I wanted to inverse that, I could get the highlights of it. And you can probably get the understanding of this one's pretty easy. Now this one might be a mask by cavity. And here's the intensity value of it. I can inverse that. And then we'll go peaks and valleys. And inverse that. There we go. Nicely painted in there. If you go back to render, go to preview, very nice. Alright, you can also mask based upon ambient occlusion, which is the touching of two items. Well, it's a little bit more than that, but this one takes a while. So if you hit it, don't be surprised that you're going to go be able to get a cup of coffee and come back. It's also very memory intensive. I like using all the other ones besides this one first. It is really accurate. I'll give it that. Right. So I'll end up editing this video now because I pressed the magical ambient occlusion button, but I'll see you in a little bit. Okay, sweet. So to see what that did, we'll go to flat shading, and there we go. So you can look at this area right here, it's all masked off. I'll inverse that, and I'll just go nuts with the shading. Clear it, and then go in here and render it. And look how detailed that one is. It's very detailed. Alright, you can also mask by a color. It's not very, this one, like the hue, I still to this day of using all the way back from Zbrush like 3 or no 2.5. They didn't have this feature, of course, but you know, till that day I still have not figured out mask by hue. So if you want to leave a comment, that's cool. Mask by saturation is pretty easy. So if you have a brighter color or a dimmer color, the saturation level, so more color equals higher degree of mask, and then the more black and white feature would equal not. So this all works upon a color. Here we go. Let's put some red, and let's put some darker red. Okay, and then let's mask by saturation. You can see the more saturated levels remain unmasked, and then we can just inverse that. Very cool. Which allows us to maybe Z-add in those areas and add some texture. Clear that out. If I mask by hue, it's going to mask all the pseudo white areas. Okay. And then masking by intensity, this is going to get the darker areas of your already colored mesh. So sometimes I use these, sometimes I don't, but I really do use a lot of the smoothness, peaks, and cavity, a little ambient occlusion every once in a while. But whatever you do with it, at least you have it in your arsenal now. Alright, so I hope you enjoyed. We'll do mask by alpha and how to apply those in a little bit when we can concentrate on saving in alpha. See that video later. Enjoy.